In today's video, we're going on a journey. I'm gonna explain how I went from looking like this to looking like this. How I've taken my clients from looking like this to looking like this. And I'm gonna explain to you the perfect diet to reach your goals. Hey guys, what's going on? This is Paul Ravella from ProPhysique.com, and today's video is a topic that I think it's been something on my mind for a long time now, and I want to discuss with you the idea behind the perfect diet, the ramifications of the perfect diet when it comes to, we'll talk about the evidence base. What are the perfect, say, macronutrient ratios? How much protein, how much carbs, how much fat? What about food sources? What about processed food? What about sugars? What is the perfect diet to reach your goals, and what are the things that we should consider? The first thing I did was I went in Google and I typed in the perfect diet. I just wanted to see what kind of information was out there because I've been reading nutrition and bodybuilding and fitness material for more than 30 years, guys. And I went back to school to study nutrition, to study exercise science, to study human physiology, because I'm always searching for that answer. And I don't think I've ever actually just addressed the question straight up, what is the perfect diet? So I wanted to know what there was to say. And I actually found this interesting site related to Harvard that showed the perfect plate of food. And I gotta say, I really liked it. The plate of food, as you'll see on the screen here, basically broke down half the plate into vegetables and half into fruit, right? Veggies and fruit with a little more emphasis on the vegetables. You know, I think we all can assume that, there's some value in those micronutrients. It's going to help control the blood sugar when we get things like vegetables. Fruits, I'm a big lover of fruit. I love my watermelon, I love my banana, I love my strawberries and blueberries and things like that. We know that those foods are healthy. Why? Because they get shoved in our face as being healthy. But what about grains? I think a lot of times we don't realize that a quarter of our diet should possibly be grains, pastas, rices, breads, things like that. Protein, a quarter of our plate. Is that enough? Is that too much? Who knows? This is what we're going to discuss, and I'm going to break down the idea of what makes up the perfect diet for you. First and foremost, when it comes to the perfect diet, it has to have high nutrient value. Now, I'm going to give you different areas of this diet, and I'm not going to rank them in order. I'm just telling you from the start, high nutrient value is very important. Why? Our diet directly reflects how we feel every day. It's going to impact our ability to be physical, our ability to be emotional, our ability to be successful. And if you are not taking care of your diet, it's going to have a really big downstream effect on the rest of your life. If you guys aren't familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if we're not taking care of those baseline needs, the food, the shelter, we're not able to self-actualize. So if you want to be the best version of yourself, you got to start with a high nutrient diet. And I can certainly explain to you in my own experience what happened when I took control of my diet. When I went from someone that just ate kind of what I thought was good, kind of for enjoyment, and I actually started digging in, I actually started tracking. And I'll be honest, I did my first bodybuilding competition where I got really lean. I got this lean, and I still do it to this day. It changed my life for the better. I went from being someone that was just getting by in life to was an overachiever. And it is directly related to the nutrition I put in my body. It has a downstream effect. So make sure that the food that you're eating has high nutritional value, but don't stop there. Although our food needs to be high in nutrients, it also needs to be enjoyable. I see a lot of people enter a phase of dieting where they go, this is my diet plan, and they literally hate the foods they're eating. And while you may be able to get results, I promise you, if you're completely reducing sodium, if you're completely cutting out flavor, if you're eating foods that you don't enjoy to get a result, when you get the result, what's going to happen is you're going to undo a lot of the work that you've done because it's not sustainable. So make your diet enjoyable. Find options that work well that are also not just going to be enjoyable, but also have that high nutrient value that we talk about. And sometimes it can help to actually just eat for enjoyment. Guilt-free, giving yourself something that you crave. Okay, our diet is about our life. Our life is about enjoying this process. And if you can find ways to include things you enjoy, it's going to make the process much more sustainable. You can't live so far on the enjoyment side, though, that you never pay attention to the nutrient value. And at the end of this video, I'm going to show you what I consider to be a perfect meal. This next one is a big one. It has to support your daily activities. We all have a different thought on what our diet should look like. Heck, I get people commenting on my videos saying that I should be on carnivore, I should be on keto, I should avoid sugar. Well, here's the problem with all those diets. They do not support my activities. So while you are your own data point, you have your own understanding of what works best for you, It will not work best for me, and it will not work best for every single person that's going to watch this video. So making sure that your diet supports your activities. If you're an endurance athlete, if you're a power athlete, if you're a sport athlete, heck, if you're just sitting on the couch playing video games and you want to be highly alert, but you don't move a lot, there should be a diet for that where you're making sure that you're not putting on body fat, being unhealthy, right? So I don't want us to judge each other's diets. I want us to really understand that, hey, I'm working on what works best for me. Congrats on you finding what works best for you, but we have to stop being tribal and judgmental about each other's diets. So let me explain a little bit about my diet and why I do, what the evidence supports for me. I love to lift weights. My goal is muscular hypertrophy. I want my muscles to be bigger. I'm 47 years old. I've been lifting weights for 30 years. Yes, I'm obsessed with it. It's just what I like to do. I probably get too lean for some people watching this video and you think, oh, you looked better when you had more body fat. That's great. That's your opinion, and that's what you should do with your life. I love the process of adding muscle, losing body fat, manipulating my physique. And to do that, I've gone back, I've studied, I've been surrounded by the best experts in the world on how much protein to eat to add muscle, how much carbohydrates to eat to add muscle, how much fat I need to eat to build muscle, and then ultimately be able to lose fat and be healthy. Now, if you have no idea where to start, I've built a calculator specifically for you, okay? And it includes some ideas on where your activity should be, where your macronutrients, your protein, carbs, fat, how many meals per day, what works best for you based on if you're sedentary, if you're active, how much you exercise per day. So I'd like you guys to check out this calculator here and go try it out. This is my gift to you, and I really love just getting feedback from you guys. Put in the comments below the calories and macros it gives you, and I would love to see that. The next most important thing that I want to discuss about the perfect diet is variety. Variety is the spice of life, guys. We need to be able to experiment and enjoy and find foods. And heck, sometimes you're going to try something and realize it's not your jam. And other times you're going to realize, wow, this is something that I want to have on a frequent basis. I can think way back to a time before I had tried sushi in my early 20s. That was a game changer for me. I went, wow, I never thought I would like a raw fish and rice. But heck, it's amazing, and I think all of us at this point have tried sushi. But I was around before sushi was a common thing, and it was something that I really wasn't interested in. But when I tried it, man, am I glad I did. And it's opened up my eyes, as well as many other things. I've traveled all around the world, okay? And I've seen and tried things that I never would have tried. And it's taught me the value of trying new things and seeing what I really enjoy. Unexpected twists on food keeps things interesting. And if you eat the same thing all the time, you're eventually going to break. Any diet or any meal plan that you are on that is something that you cannot see yourself eating for the rest of your life, eventually you're going to break. Many of my friends, myself, my peers that are in this fitness space, what I have found is that we tend to get into patterns where we find a meal that we love and we'll stick with it for 6 months or a year, and then all of a sudden I'll change it up. My breakfast will go from eggs and tomatoes and mushrooms to maybe now it's a protein shake and toast. Whatever it is, I'm constantly finding that if I find a meal that I really enjoy, I can stick with it for a long time. But even then, I'm learning the value of flexibility. And at the end of this video, I'm gonna explain how to be flexible and show you what that perfect meal looks like. And last but not least, certainly not least, is the idea of being social. The perfect diet, the perfect meal will have a social component, meaning we cannot just expect to sit on our diet and be at home. For many of us, our celebrations, our cultures are based around meals. Time spent together in the kitchen, time spent with your family and friends cooking, time spent with family and friends out at a restaurant, having some alcohol. Whatever it may be, you don't want to completely remove the element of being social, spending time with friends and family. So if you're going to find the perfect diet, if you're going to find the perfect approach for you, it's going to have to incorporate your ability to fit into your social gatherings and enjoy life. Guys, if we don't have friends, if we don't have these connections, it's going to be a very, very lonely life. And I promise you that's going to lead us down a bad place. No matter how lean you get, if you're not able to be social, eventually that is going to be a big problem. I see it a lot in the bodybuilding community where people tend to be very pragmatic about their diets. They refuse to eat out. And for certain periods of time, I have no problem with that. But in the big picture, I think competitors, I think those of us who have fitness and physique goals should learn flexibility. We should learn how to incorporate our lifestyle into our life. Okay, we should be able to incorporate events and time spent with friends. Why? it's going to help them invest in us. If every time that I entered a dieting phase for a bodybuilding show, I stopped spending time with my family, stopped going out with my parents, stopped, spending time with my siblings, my friends, my athletes, if I didn't go to these events, guess what they would say every time I said I was doing a bodybuilding competition or dieting for fat loss? They would say, great, we don't get to spend any time with you. And this has happened. I've seen this ruin relationships. So I'm saying you need to be able to understand how to fit your diet into the social aspect of your life. If we're talking about the perfect diet, it's going to include that element. So what does the perfect meal look like? I want to explain to you, if we're talking about the perfect diet, the things that make a meal very exciting for me to eat. First of all, I always start with my protein. Why? Ever since I was a little kid, the first book that I read, all it talked about was how much protein we need and how much protein we need to build muscle and keep muscle. And while I think it's often overstated and overdone at some times, whenever I have a consultation with someone, whenever someone's interested in working with me or my company, the first thing I have them do is a diet recall. And I can almost assuredly tell you their average protein is going to be between 50 and 80 grams of protein a day. And it's not even through direct protein sources usually. They're just getting so many calories a day, 4,000 calories, that part of that is protein. When you take the time to actually consciously consume more protein, you have more muscle, you have less body fat. Research backs this up. Why? Because when you eat protein, you stay fuller longer. You also create muscle protein synthesis throughout the day where your body is able to add lean tissue. Lean tissue leads to maintaining more muscle and less body fat over time. So if we're starting the perfect meal with protein, then it comes down to the protein source. There are a lot of questions around what is the best protein source. I tend to focus on leaner proteins. What do I mean by leaner proteins? I like protein that is mostly protein, okay? It's very easy to get a protein source that has many other macronutrients in it, okay? You can get a steak that has 60, 70 grams of fat and also 60, 70 grams of protein. I prefer leaner sources. Why? Because usually I'm gonna include something that is directly a fat source. So if we're talking about leaner protein sources, everyone knows about chicken, okay? Grilled chicken breast, things like turkey, things like fishes, things like tuna, things like eggs, egg whites. But we also have the option to be vegan. And a lot of my clients that I work with now are vegan. And I found that the vegan community has created lots of good options for lean protein sources to eat. So whatever your ethics, your morals, that's also going to be a part of the perfect diet for you. You can include, as long as you're hitting your macronutrients, vegan sources and remain vegan and still add a ton of muscle. I've seen amazing things. So don't limit your thinking just because you have a different moral subset than the rest of us. The next thing I tend to focus on when it comes to the perfect meal is going to be the fats, because fats are going to set up the cascade of hormones for our body. Fats help our digestion. Fats are very important. And I know there's been, throughout the history of nutritional kind of news, I've seen low-fat dieting is great. And the term low-fat dieting can make it seem like we should be avoiding fat, which is not the case. Although fat is higher in calories and it is stored easier as fat, ultimately what's going to decide our fat loss is our caloric deficit throughout the day. So you don't want to avoid fat. You want to keep fat in a healthy range. I usually say 20 to 25% of your daily calories. And if we're looking at a plate of food, let's say the perfect meal, we're probably going to get a little bit of fat from whatever protein source that we're taking in, but I like to add something secondary, okay? A favorite one is a couple slices of avocado for me. But that doesn't mean it has to be the favorite source for you. Find a source of fat that you digest well. I also like nuts, okay? I'll do cashews, I'll do almonds, I'll do pecans, things like that that are primarily going to be heavy in fats, okay? That source is going to be great for you. I'll also include a supplement because although I like fish, I don't eat enough of it. So I will include some essential fatty acids and make sure I'm getting a full spectrum of healthy fats. Now, the perfect meal for me is obviously going to include carbohydrates. Why? Carbohydrates are fuel for your body. They're a fuel for your brain. They're a fuel for fat loss. That's right. My favorite quote from my exercise physiology textbook is that fat burns in a carbohydrate flame. And when I read that, it turned on a light bulb in my head because I think a lot of us think every time we eat carbs, we're storing fat because the insulin response. But if you combine your foods, A, you don't have to worry about an insulin response. It's going to blunt it. And B, insulin is not just a fat storage hormone. It's an energy storage hormone. And when you have something with carbohydrates, it's going to store in your muscles. Insulin simply shuttles things where they need to go. If you're in a caloric deficit, sugar is not going to matter. You are still going to lose body fat. So while I do suggest we include some high valuable, high quality, micronutrient dense vegetables. I love things like potatoes. I love things like broccoli, leafy greens. I'm a big fruit guy. I live in Florida. I love my oranges, love my strawberries, but I also love watermelon, things like that. So the perfect meal for me is going to be very well rounded. I'm probably going to include a rice or a pasta as a grain just to make sure I'm getting enough carbohydrates. How many carbohydrates should you be taking in for the day? Use the meal planner to track it because it all comes down to your activity level. The more intense exercise you're doing, the more carbohydrates you should be taking in to fuel your performance and to fuel your muscle growth. The less active you are, the less carbohydrates you're going to want to have, okay? Too many carbohydrates and low activity is likely going to lead to drowsiness, as you're going to be having negative impacts on your blood sugar throughout the day. However, for someone like myself, I regularly take in 400 to 500 grams of carbohydrates a day, and yes, I even take in lots of sugar when the time requires it, or if I just want to enjoy some sugar. I do not fear sugar. Why? Because I understand the value that it has. It's an easy to digest source of carbohydrates for me. And I'll also include that my protein numbers are hit and my fiber numbers are hit. And when those things are present, sugar has no negative impact on you. Okay, guys? I think a lot of us hear these terms. Fat is bad, sugar is bad. I don't think of it that way, okay? I also think some people will say, well, you shouldn't eat pizza, you shouldn't eat cake, you shouldn't eat pie, you shouldn't eat donuts. I disagree. I think you should be able to fit those things in. If we're talking about the perfect diet, it should not be so limiting that you have to have an off-on switch that's going to potentially lead to eating disorder behaviors where you just binge on something when you can finally have it. No, I find that people that understand flexible dieting, my philosophy around dieting is to include foods that you enjoy that are going to make this diet best for you, but also work towards your daily macronutrients. Those are the most successful dieters. They can go out to dinner and have a piece of cake or a bite of cake. They can go out to dinner and have a piece of pizza or a bite of pizza. But they're also going to, their other 40 meals a week, be hitting their protein, carbs, and fats. Very unprocessed, clean, micronutrient-dense foods. They're going to help them feel good throughout the day, have great energy, be something they can look forward to, and help them perform whatever task it is that they plan to do that day and continue progressing towards their goals. So guys, the perfect diet, the first thing that I found on the internet about it said there is no perfect diet for every single person. You can't screw this up. Don't feel like because you eat something that is being demonized by one group of people, it makes the diet less than perfect. Your perfect diet is going to be different from my perfect diet, okay? So I want you guys to go out there, experiment, be accountable, use a nutrition tracker, figure out the foods that you enjoy, find out what makes you feel good. Guys, I don't have dairy. Why? Because I just don't digest it well. Does that mean dairy is bad for you? Absolutely not. Take in all the dairy you can. I miss it. But for me, my perfect diet does not include dairy because my body decided that it is no longer going to digest it with ease. So I simply avoid it, and guess what? I feel better. I have better energy. My digestion is better. And I've just replaced it with different sources to still hit my macronutrient and micronutrient goals without feeling like I'm missing out. All right, guys, hopefully, guys, this helps you on your way, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.